This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
Imagine buying your kid a toy, only to find the batteries aren't included. Or buying furniture, but it's missing the tools to build it. Frustrating, right? Now imagine that exact same feeling, but you're paying way more. That is what buying business software usually feels like. Fragmented, disconnected, and incredibly expensive. Odoo completely changes that. Odoo is a complete, fully integrated business suite where all your apps actually talk to each other. We're talking automated lead routing for your sales team, seamless AI integration, and an intuitive point-and-click website builder. It's everything your business needs to scale, saving you time, headaches, and money. Stop piecing your software together. Go to odoo.com. That's ODOO.com to learn more.
A Swift Kick in the Ass, episode 144. Life is challenging and difficult. No one gets out alive. Time to suck it up, Buttercup. Get ready for a monster-sized boot aimed to help you get traction on personal change and get living. I am John Curran, your host. Join me as I share my journey exploring the forces that motivate us to change and help us get through whatever life throws at us. A swift kick in the ass. Life on your terms. Welcome to another episode of A Swift Kick in the Ass. This is your host, John Curran, and today's topic, loving your stress. Damn. Did John just say love your stress? Yeah, I did. I've been, I got introduced to a TV show or a docuseries, I guess, documentary or docuseries, not sure, with Chris Hemsworth, who plays Thor on the Marvel movies. This show is produced through National Geographic, and it's called Limitless. And, you know, Chris Hemsworth is a pretty big dude and everything, and you know, keeps in shape and plays all these action heroes and everything. He's a movie star, right? But he's a lot like us. If you watch this, you might really see how relatable he is and see how human he is. I think this showed the human side of Chris Hemsworth, which is really, really cool. But not the point of this episode. So Chris Hemsworth talks about his relationship with stress. And in fact, this is really about my relationship with stress as well, because I can't speak for Chris Hemsworth. I'm not him. And you can go ahead and check that out if you want to, but it's pretty cool. But we talk about kind of establishing a good relationship with our stress. You know, stress is never going to go away. Stress is a part of life. In fact, we want stress. Some stress is good. And in fact, there's a term called eustress that is the term for good stress. If we don't have stress, you know, stress gives us form, it gives us function, and it keeps us together. If we didn't have stress, we just would be a blob. And I don't think any of us really want to be a blob. So we want some stress in our life. And when we're overstressed and we're, you know, strained by that and it's chronic and it wears us down, I mean, that's not good. It's not good to be chronically stressed. It's not good for the body. You know, it's good when it comes and goes, but it's really bad long term if it's just stays in a constant state like that. Our body's not designed really to deal with that, and that's the cause of a lot of diseases, which is talked about on that show, Limitless. Not my idea, and I think it's pretty common knowledge that the way we deal with stress does affect our life, our general health, and it affects us in many different ways. It does affect our emotions. Are we, do we have a short fuse? Are we just lashing out at people when they say hello? That could be a product of stress in your life. Most likely has nothing to do with them and everything to do with you. We might go into that in another episode. So just remember that. But stress itself, as I said, it's a natural part of life. It's not going away. We need to just accept that. And in some cases, I think we need to improve our relationship with stress. And what I mean by that is, like we talk about embracing the suck. Well, getting closer to your stress and forming a better relationship with your stress is kind of what I'm saying with embracing the suck. Recognize and accept whatever's going on. Stress is defined as any type of change that causes physical, emotional, or psychological strain. Now, I'm not a medical doctor. I'm not a healthcare professional in that, in a clinical sense. Administrative, yes, but not clinical. Ask my wife, I have no bedside manner. Cha-ching. I think I got a new toy. I don't know if that's playing. I might need to cut that out. Sorry about that. Okay. In any case, we're not going to talk about. I like to talk a little bit about stresses and strains and what that means. A strain. Some basic definitions here too, I think, help us better understand what we're up against. So, in order to love something, you really can't force your own beliefs on it. On it. I think that's what gets us in trouble. Think about it with your spouse. If you just took what you were thinking about the situation and just applied it and just thought, oh yeah, your spouse thinks exactly the same way, you're going to get into a lot of trouble just assuming that, aren't you? It takes time and effort to kind of get that information out from each other and to make sure that we're on the same wavelength. It takes communication. It takes effort. Anyone who's married knows that marriage is not easy and it does require work. So same thing with loving your stress and falling in love with that stress and turning it into something positive. Instead of giving stress such a bad name and trying to avoid it and trying to create this stress-free life, it's a bunch of BS. Our life is always going to have stress in it. What we want to do is encourage good stress and create good stress. Things that change us in physical, emotional, or psychological ways for the better. Isn't that what we're after, right? By loving your stress, you're creating something positive for yourself. So let's talk about these different stresses and how they play out in our life. So there's an acute type of stress. Acute is a meaning really just short term. This is like one and done. You swerve to avoid an accident, and that affects how you affects you physically. There are physiological changes. Your blood pressure increases. Your life may flash before you. Whatever. It could be emotional. Holy crap! I just ran over a raccoon. I tried to avoid it. I'm sorry. It happens to all of us. We have these short-term episodes, one and done. It's stressful, but then things go back to normal. Now, there is this episodic acute stress, and that's when these short-term kind of one and done events are much more frequent. Like imagine someone who works as a healthcare provider in the emergency room. They're in life or death situations day in and day out throughout their shift whenever they work. They have to deal with that on a much more long-term basis. And which actually leads us to chronic, which is the long-term basis part of it. Again, I'm not a medical professional. I'm some guy who has a podcast. So you can look all this stuff up. This show is not really to give you all the answers. I don't have all the answers. I'm looking for them myself. But I have a passion for really looking into things that are going to help me. And I hope that they help you in the process. That's what this show is about. So I'm going to kind of shift this discussion into, ways that we can love our stress and some approaches that we can take. Now, there are different types of ways that we can strain our stressors, push them to the limits, right? Straining is actually the ratio of change in dimension from, the original dimension. So if you're looking at things and measuring things, which we should be if we're trying to go somewhere, we want to create a plan and create some goals. And what better way to know if we've reached a goal than to measure it, set some type of bar, some type of way to define if you reached what you're trying to do. So one way I know of straining your stressors is, one big stressor in all of our lives is the environment in which we live. Environments are a huge cause of stress in our lives. Well, why not just move? What if where you're living is toxic, if it's negative, why do you remain there? You could pick up and you can leave. Now, I'm not saying, you're having problems with your wife and kids and that, just run away. I'm not saying doing that. Don't do that. Live up to your obligations. You really want a swift kick in the ass? Don't live up to your obligations. It's not what this show is about. This show is about creating positive change in your life that affects you in a positive way, not hurt others in the process. So, but if you want to recreate yourself and start new, one of the best ways to do that is just to cut your ties where you are, move away, create a new life for yourself somewhere else, new place to live, new job. I'm not saying change your name. I'm not saying change your identity or anything like that, but parts of your identity will change through the experience of doing that. So I've done that several times. I did that as out of high school. I left home and went to school. I went away to college. And then when I was in college, I decided, you know what? I want to go to graduate school. So I moved out of Florida entirely and moved up into Georgia to get my graduate degree. I was working full-time, going to school full-time to pursue my education. When you have a goal in mind, like getting an education, it's kind of spelled out for you what you need to do. And that plays back into something I talked about a few episodes back, and that was about the importance of roles, taking on a role in your change, whatever change you're trying to create in your life. It often helps to take on a role. So I took on the role of student. When I left Florida and moved to Georgia, I went there to pursue my education. And boy, did I get educated. And at the end of my stay in Georgia, I was married. I was graduated with 2 master's degrees, married, and we had our first child. So it was a good move. I strained, I created a lot of stress in my life over that time period because I was, working full time. I was paying my way through school. So I didn't take out really any loans for that up until the last year. But that is one case to where I just decided I'm going to start new. And I actually did that again when I moved up here to Richmond, Virginia. I decided, I was so tired of Atlanta. I had spent 15 years there. I was stressed to the max. I mean, talk about strain. I did not even get out of the driveway and road rage would hit me. I just hated living there. So you know what? I transferred. I mean, I didn't transfer, but I guess I did transfer. Transferred locations, and I went from Atlanta to Richmond. And I did it in such a way that my employer actually paid for my move, and I had a paycheck the entire way. I had the support of my work. They wanted me to move to Richmond. They were willing to pay for it. So I was able to get what I wanted and have them pay for it. How awesome is that? That's what I'm talking about, loving your stress and falling in love with your stress. Feed it in positive ways that benefit you. You can leverage your resources and leverage what you want to get more of what you want out of life. Kick it in the ass. That's what this show is about. So if you may not be able to just cut all your ties, get up and leave. I certainly can't do that. I have a friend who recently kind of started putting a plan in action to do that, and I just love it. He's also getting out of Florida. He put his condo up for sale. It was sold in one day. But before he put his house up or his condo up for sale, he made sure that he was able to get a license for his. He's a professional, mental health professional, so he has a license, and he got his Colorado license first. And then as soon as that all went through and he had that in hand, he, put in his notice at work, he sold his house and, started taking steps. And next month he will be living in Colorado. Less than 30 days, he's out of there. That is so freaking cool. And, yes, it was stressful. Yes, he strained his relationship with his current life. He's getting something so much better, and he has this opportunity now to create his life in any such way that he feels. I think in some ways that's easier to do when you're starting fresh. You have all these opportunities to make different decisions that affect the quality of your life. And it's easier to create opportunities for those decisions when everything is brand new and you're starting fresh. But I'm not willing to do that. I'm not willing to give up my house or move. It's important that I stay where I'm at right now. It's important to get the most out of my life, but I want to stay put, not only for the sake of my kids, but the sake of my wife. And I like my setup here. I've got it pretty good. I need to make some changes, but who doesn't? Again, it's all part of life, and part of what I'm telling you, it's time for you to fall in love with your life and fall in love with the stressors and, realize that they're not going away, but that you can make the best out of them and turn them into a good thing. If there's bad stress in your life, you need to shed that and replace it with something good. Habits, this also boils down into habits, and I know it's probably time for me to wrap things up, but so much of life is a habit. And what I mean is that we just walk through life not thinking about things. There's so much going on in life. We'd be overwhelmed if we didn't have habits. If we had to think about everything that we did every step of the way, we wouldn't get out our door. It's crazy. And the world seems to be getting crazier. But you can control that. You can control the stress from that. Take that into your own hands and figure it out for yourself and how to make that work for you. No one else is going to do it but you. And so how are you going to change your stress and have a better relationship with your stress? How are you going to give it flowers? How are you going to start dating your stress? Think about it. If you're dating someone, you're really getting to know them, right? And in that process, hopefully you fall in love, about them. You see their flaws, and it doesn't matter because you love them. That's a pretty good feeling. So I'm going to end it there. But fall in love with your stress. I think you'll be better off for it. This is John Curran on A Swift Kick in the Ass. Until next time, peace. This marks the end of another episode of A Swift Kick in the Ass, placing it directly in the can. As much as I like to talk, even I have my limits. It's time to go. Catch me on the next show. For better or worse, whether you like us or not, please leave comments wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on Twitter. Visit our home on the interweb. I think you can leave me a voicemail there. You can also email me at john@aswiftkickintheass.com. It's been my extreme pleasure. I hope you got a lot out of it. I hope you got your ass moving. Until then, until the next time, I'm out of here. Peace.